All right, so hey guys, welcome to the Endure with Nick podcast. Got a special guest here, Mr. Kevin Fain. True OG from Melbourne, and I'm glad to have you on the show, man. I appreciate you coming. So we'll just jump right into it. Want to talk about your early childhood? Like, what was it like growing up? Where are you from?
Well, excuse me. I was born in Rockledge, Florida. My early years were mainly in Cocoa. But eventually we moved to West Palm Beach when my parents separated. And most of my elementary as well as junior high school was in West Palm Beach. And the high school years, we ended up coming back to Cocoa, where I finished my high school at Rockledge High School.
What year you graduated?
1978, a long time ago. Were you born then?
Oh, God.
Okay.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
How old are you, man?
I'm 66.
You look good.
Well, thank you. I think I can go 10-8.
So so growing up, like what brought you into wanting to be in the law enforcement?
Ironically, I never wanted to be in law enforcement. I have a best friend of mine who was very influential on all my career paths. My going into the Marine Corps was because of him. And back in 1983, a position came up at the police department, Melbourne Police Department, for a trainee, paying a little over $5 an hour. He told me about it, and we both vied for the position, but I was one of two people that got the position. I only applied for the position because they paid more money than the job I had previously. So I never had any aspirations of being a police officer, even though during my childhood, I always wanted to be a superhero, the Avengers and all that stuff. I was kind of like that, but I never thought about police work as a job. So when I got it, I was kind of surprised because I never had any inkling that I could, or rather want to be a police officer. Just kind of looked up into it.
So did you go to the academy up here? Or?
Went to academy at up there at Eastern Florida. It's called now Eastern Florida State College.
Yeah, BCC back then?
Yeah, back then funny thing is back then, the amount of hours was only like 320. So I was going part-time, like 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. at night, like 4 hours a week. It was, like I said, the thing, it wasn't as intense as it is right now.
Mm. So what year did you end up getting hired on with Melbourne?
1983 as a trainee, where I worked part-time at the police department, and then I would go to the academy in the evening. Still not knowing what the hell I got myself into. I just was trying to, but at that time I was married, had a young child, so I was trying to do what I had to do to support my kids, or my kid as well as my wife.
Tell me what it was like being in law enforcement back then in the early 80s, especially, being in the South, what were the numbers of how many black cops did they even have down there?
Back then, I think we maybe had 6. And I guess the sad thing about my discovery of law enforcement back then was I wasn't from Melbourne, and the most simple way I can explain it was the white officers didn't seem to really care about me, but the blacks seemed to hate me, which, and it still impacts me to this day how I wasn't welcomed in. But
you mean like your coworkers, like the black coworkers, or like the streets?
As far as I will say, my biggest disappointment was with the black officers. I hate to use the word black, because I like to be defended by Negro or Caucasian, whatever. But anyway, I use for the terms of short and stuff. The black officers wasn't welcoming. I would have thought that back then they would have kind of glommed on to me.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And they let me, I hate to use the word, but they let me wallow by myself. And it was very difficult.
So I guess like they were already veterans there, and then
There were veterans there, and they probably were going through their own stuff. They didn't have time for some young, skinny black guy that came there.
I mean, I seen the old pictures of you, man. Like you look like, I mean, you were a stud back then. I mean, you're still strong.
No, I wasn't. You know, the irony was, man, I'm at like 170 pounds. So it was very, of course, it was a foreign job to me, and I was struggling. And one thing I don't have a problem admitting about my struggles, I had my successes, but it was my struggles that really made me, because I really didn't think I could do the job. And I think I was, and of course in hindsight, I think I was put in a position to fail because I was so timid, afraid, and I had to battle through that.
Did I mean, it sounded like you might not have had any kind of mentorship there, but like, did you have any like eventually kind of like helping you along the way?
Yes, the eventual mentorship came through an officer there that happened to work. He was an experienced officer from Michigan. Ended up being my partner because I used to think my supervisor knew I was struggling, so they put me with him. And he formed the base of me becoming, I use the term, becoming more stronger, more legit. And the funny thing about the whole thing is back then, and this is kind of embarrassing, because they wasn't accustomed to hiring police officers, black police officers, that could write. So, I'm just talking about back then. I thought they would just walk up and, I'm just turn black thugs. Guys could knock some people's heads around. But here I am, a skinny kid, don't know nothing, but I could write a report, which I thought was kind of fascinating when I was confronted about I could write. I'm like, I thought everybody was police officers. That's all you do, write people's stories. But I realized that a lot of the expectations of a black officer that they couldn't write. And then some of it was very true. So when I came along, I'm like, this is some skinny old black guy that he ain't that big to fight nobody, but he could write a report though. And I never forget how shocked my FTO was when I had good penmanship back then. I could spell. I knew how to write a sentence. And it was so stunning to that how little white field training officer, he was like, wow, you could write. And I'm like, I thought everybody could write. It wasn't meant as an insult, but even I was like stunned, like, well, how you hire people that don't know how to write? But back then, in the early 80s, they had done that. It may have been some affirmative action stuff. I don't know. I know sometimes you just need, more of us, so to speak. So I think that kind of put me in a different category. Like, oh, he ain't that big, but he could write. Well, that's a good guy to have around.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at you, like, especially this day and age, I make the joke of saying, like, you're a bricklayer. Like, there was definitely,
oh my God,
yeah, those terms of like, there's no like me being in this field or like any like just anybody like a person of color or something without there being people that have been through, we deal with racist people outside on the job all the time. But when you're dealing with it with like in-house, it takes some thick skin to go through to kind of progress to get to where we're at now.
It takes tremendous thick skin. And again, I wasn't from Melbourne, so I was a foreigner to everybody. I just, I'd been in the Marines 4 years, and here's a guy a year later, he's working. So I didn't have any so-called friendships, connections, stuff like that. It was just bare bones.
So so take me through like what was everything you did up in Melbourne, like career wise? Like,
What I do?
yeah, specialty units or anything, or
Well, I did work in the street counter unit. I was a supervisor in narcotics about 2 years, but most of my time was spent on the road. I always loved the road anyway, because that's where the people, really the people that really need you. When I always say when they need a superhero, you need to be one, and when you get there, you may be able to do some stuff. I was very. I know I had to elevate my game to be that.
if you want to take me through, I know like you've been talking about lately, the incident with former coworker Larry Simpson.
Yes. It's hard to believe it happened June 23rd, 2001. And I try to condense the story down, but all I know is those last 48 hours were, I call it, this is stuff that should be in movies, because I went from a friend I just spoke to them being dead less than 48 hours later without me seeing the signs until the last 6 hours of his life. And of course, after he committed suicide, I found other facts later, but even back then, I still get emotional about it. My friend Larry was, he was a well-known officer, known for being very aggressive, stuff like that, because he came around during the crack era where we really did a lot of fighting in the streets, a lot of scuffling and stuff like that. So that's how he was brought up during that era. So he kind of maintained that persona. And we had to do some things. Like I say, the streets was a little bit more violent, a little bit more hostile. And so it's kind of like anything with aggression, turn it on, turn it off. And even talking about that incident, I can honestly say, even when I was able to see it on video, the real thing is, I'm done worse than that. I've seen worse than that. And I'm not saying those things were necessarily right, but I do know that there was certain suspects provide the stimulus for your actions. And of course, in Larry's case, it didn't seem to, from looking at the tape, it didn't seem to merit what he did. And I said I get kind of long-winded about the story. I'm trying to cut it down a little bit for time's sake, but I do.
We got time.
Okay. Well, I keep forgetting it's not a TV show, but anyway. And I wrote and when I wrote about it, finally, I had to clear up some misunderstandings about me, because I had tremendous anger that dissolved into hate, and it definitely impacted my career. But I felt like I sacrificed my career to tell the truth about my friend. When he, I guess I have to start with when it first kicked off. You have time for that? Okay. So
Yeah, we got time for that.
it was a Thursday afternoon. Had to have been the 21st of June, 2001. I'm a sergeant, just conducted my squad meeting. I walked out the squad meeting, and one of the commanders, I won't say his name, because I would say anybody I didn't like or did something I didn't like, I would not say their name. But it was a commander that asked me had I talked to Larry. I'm like, yeah, I just talked to him a while ago, because we was in constant communication, because he was suspended at least 1 or 2 months. And Larry told me it was because of he was betting on football games. He got in trouble with that before. At least that's how I heard about it in the earlier internal investigation. So I thought it was related to that, which, of course, unfortunately, I found out was a lie. But again, I was talking to this guy like 5-6 days a week. So I was very in tune with what was going on with him. And of course, during the time I would go to his house, have some drinks and stuff, cut the food, whatever. So the commander asked me that. I talked to him, like, yeah, I did. He said, can you reach him? I'm like, yeah, I can reach him. I just talked to him, called him, talked to Larry. He said, okay, I read the message. He said, okay, I'll call you back. Of course, Larry didn't call me back. And I don't know what made me think, let me make sure he did that. So I saw the commander again, and I asked him. I said, did Larry call you? He said, no. I said, well, let me call him again. So I called him. Second time, I said, hey, man, you need to call this commander because something's going on. I think something to do with your investigation. I had no clue what was going on. He said, okay, I'll call you back, which he never did. So I'm finally getting ready to go out on the road. And the commander calls me into the conference room, and the chief was there. And he's sitting there, and he's looking at me. He was like, okay, did you talk to Larry? I mean, very direct. I'm like, yeah. He said, what did he say? He said, he called him. And the chief said, so he disobeyed your order. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just read the message. Well, Kevin, you're a supervisor. I'm like, hey, man, and then I got a little irked because I'm like, hey, man, using my friendship in this mess, I don't know what's going on. Of course, I got to get ready to go out on the road. So he showed me the videotape of the incident. And I used to have the videotape. It was on a VHS back then. And he grabbed him by the neck. He thumped his head on the desk, no doubt about it. I didn't think it was very hard, but I would still say unwarranted. But so, and then he shows me a piece of paperwork that had it was a warrant for his arrest, as well as labeling him armed and dangerous. And now I'm crying because I'm floored because I realized one of my best friends lied to me. And now we're in a situation where they got him for, I can't remember all the charges, but one of those battery, official misconduct. And the irony about the whole thing was, and this is the added part about the story, was I happened to be the supervisor that was requested to notarize the paperwork. So I actually went in the booking room. Larry never said nothing that happened. It was after the fact. Larry never said nothing happened, and neither did the suspect, or the prisoner rather. He didn't mention anything that happened previously, so all I did was sign off on the paperwork and walk out. So once I saw that, like I said, I started crying because I realized my friend was in trouble. And I told the chief, well, let me talk to him to get him to turn himself in. Okay. And I talked to Larry, and we were going to, that was a Thursday, so Friday, we were supposed to meet up at the jail in Sharps at 6 o'clock, 1800. And my instructions were, once I get up there, to contact my supervisor, which was the lieutenant, to meet me up there. I didn't know what that was entailing. And I have to mention that in the Melbourne Police Department, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, we really had some, I hate to use the word racial division, but it was definitely, we spoke among ourselves, they spoke among themselves. I'll just leave it at that. So, as myself and Melvin Bird, who was the only person that stood behind me the whole time, we were going to meet Larry up at Sharps Detention Center, where at least in my opinion, they were just going to do a RR, just reasonable reconnaissance. You know, got to get fingerprinted, photograph, all that kind of stuff. All kinds of embarrassing stuff, maybe. So we're on our way up there, and we get there, and on my way up to Sharps, a black supervisor called me, and I'll clean up the term. He said, you won't believe what they're doing. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, they're going to use your conversation as an administrative reason on top of the criminal charge to go against Larry. So, in other words, if the criminal charge would have fell through, they were going to use me to fire him from a phone conversation that they didn't tell me they were going to do that. They was going to use my conversation as some kind of official order to Larry that he disobeyed false calling a commander. So I'm riding up to Sharps, and I'm in a fog. I'm like, wow, one of my best friends is going to see my name involved in this crap. And I couldn't explain it. I mean, I felt betrayed because I wasn't told that was going to happen. But they used that conversation to do them in case the criminal charges fell through, which I really believe he would have beat. I always thought whatever he did, she got suspended for. But anyway, it is what it is. So I get up there. My supervisor gets up there with the termination letter, and she gave it to me to read. And it had, as far as an addendum to the criminal charges, our phone conversation as an additional reason to terminate him. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, when my friend gets up here, he's gonna see this. But he never showed up. Because I found out later on that night, he was seeing his kids for the last time. That wasn't registering at the time. So myself and Melvin Bird went looking for Larry. And I'll tell you, I still, I had a cop mentality. Even though he was one of my great friends, he had a warrant. If I found him, I would arrest him. And I don't think nobody understood how difficult it was to go to that next level of, well, that's the law.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot because it's your best friend.
Yeah.
You find out he lied to you about what's going on, and then they're they have a whole warrant for him, and you're like, this is a lot of different information that you're trying to process.
Yeah.
On top of being his direct supervisor, you're like, that's many different levels.
And I would say the friendship part was, I'd rather arrest him than let them, because they'd probably be more heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I had to kill them. If they, but I knew him intimately, so I'm like, no, I'll do it. We'll do it. Me and Melvin would do it. And I couldn't see why I'm looking for him. I'm still kind of tripping, because I'm like, wow. Because Larry's like 6'2", 260, big guy. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to fight one of my best friends. And how, I use the word, in the sake of justice, how you have to do some things that you don't necessarily want to do, but are willing to do it to keep things from escalating, which they eventually did, to what it ended up being. I'm like, well, I'd rather try to arrest him than let them. Out all over the place, the clubs we hung out, even where he might have had a mistress or two, stuff like that. Couldn't find him. But on to me at the time he was seeing his children for the last time. I put in my pledge, which I didn't think about that. So Melvin and I rode around till, I'll say about 2 o'clock in the morning. And Melvin had to go home, and I'm like, well, I'll keep looking for him. And I'm like, oh my God, if I find him, I'm gonna find him by myself.
So
I mean,
this has been like a whole day of looking for him.
whole day. Well, after 1800. So now we roll into the morning of the 23rd, which I stayed up with like the 0400 looking for him. And I just I couldn't figure out where he was at. He wasn't returning my phone calls. I get home to my wife, and she's mad at me for being up 4 o'clock in the morning. And she's really giving me quiet act. And then it just hit me. And I just yelled at her, I think Larry might be suicidal. And I can't find him. And I can't call my police department to help me find him because they're using me to screw him. So I was at the wit's end. I didn't know what else I could do. And I remember I laid down for a minute. I had a bad nightmare about him, about trying to apprehend him, having to shoot him, all this kind of stuff. And I get a phone call from a high-ranking black supervisor. And all he says is, and again, I told you, there was definitely a division within the police department, black and white. And he said, I think they're getting ready to move on Larry. And I jumped up, I put my clothes on. And I called Larry another time. He didn't, well, let me backtrack a little bit. The last conversation I had was that Friday night, cussing him out. And I remember saying, hey man, quit effing around. Cause I think they may send a SWAT team after you. So just let me come get you. Trace up in and we get through this stuff. And he was crying on the other end. I'm crying too. But he wouldn't not let me know where he was at. So we're gonna fast forward back to 0400. And I had a bad dream and I got the phone call from the upper level black supervisor who at the time they were using our SWAT team as well as the sheriff's SWAT team. I think they just did a warrant in the vicinity of where Larry was spotted. And the chief decided very haphazardly, well, let's get this SWAT team. It wasn't planned out at all. It was spontaneous. Oh, somebody spotted him. Let's get this youth. The SWAT team who just did a search warrant off Southland Avenue. Larry spotted on Avocado, which is not that far away. So the chief, the big boss, whatever, the bastard is. But anyway, he decides haphazardly, well, we'll just use SWAT team and move in on Larry. Larry leaves his ex-wife's home. And unfortunately, Larry's squad was working the road that day. And they told him they needed a traffic stop done on a car. They didn't even have the decency to even tell him who was in the car. Because Larry was not driving his car, he was driving his sister's car.
So it was your squad?
It was his squad, his own squad.
Okay.
That he worked with. And they did a traffic stop. I'm going by what was reported. He gets pulled over, he pulls over at Avocado, Lake Washington, pulls out his gun, and kills himself. Something that wasn't expected, evidently, which ended up bringing up a lot of anger in me because how the situation was escalated when it should have been more of a dealing with a hostage situation. There's no rush. We know where he is. We know where he's at because he never fled. He had opportunities to flee. And I said, there's some things that came out in the aftermath that I found out. But he kills himself. They do some CPR on him. They rush him to the hospital, but he's dead. And while I was staying way out in Northwest Palm Bay back then, a second officer calls me, black officer. That was the trend, because I'm getting calls from the black officers, not the white ones. And he tells me, Larry killed himself. Just go to the hospital. And I was stunned by that. I'm like, that didn't make sense to me. Why would he? And I get to the hospital. And like I said, I must have missed some time. All I know is when I got notified, that's when I got out. When I get to the hospital, there are people already there. They're devastated. His mother was there. His wife was there. There was just some black people there. And there was one officer who allowed me to go back to see Larry. And when I went in there, he's down that gurney with that bullet wound in his chest. I just fell apart because I thought it was a dream. I couldn't believe he was dead. Remember, he was still warm when I laid on him crying, and I cussed his ass out. I chuckled because it wasn't funny, but it just, that was my way of like, oh my God, he killed himself. At least that's what, and I just lost it. And after, of course, Melvin Bird ended up meeting me up there too. I say we were the most devastated ones because he was one of our best friends. We were so devastated that Melvin walked home from Holmes Regional to Southeast Palm Bay.
He walked
on
home.
Foot. Me, I was I just got in my car. I drove south on US 1. I was shocked because I couldn't, I just never been shocked by anything like that. So I just drove south. I'm gonna drove south of Vero before I actually made a U-turn to turn around to go back home. How do I start to go? And I never could get myself together because I just couldn't believe that happened. And of course, I was very disappointed that none of the decision makers were nowhere to be found because they didn't plan on that happening. So they didn't even, they went in hiding, figuring out what's next, I guess. But they were never present. And unfortunately, I kicked off some things I eventually did to hold the chief accountable for what happened. And I wrote about it on Facebook how I had Larry's picture in my locker, and I wrote, you know how in the prison, she's right there, little dashes on the wall, how many days they got. I did it till, say, 445. The day which the chief resigned, which was September 11, 2002. Because I went on a mission to hold them accountable for what happened. And I don't want to sound like I'm rambling, but
So it was like one of those where they go back, do a debrief, kind of reassess like how they could have. Because I mean, it was just a warrant for what? Just a simple battery?
It was a warrant for I know official misconduct was one of the charges.
Like he wasn't charged with a violent felony.
No.
Yeah.
But he was listed as armed and dangerous because he's a cop.
Yeah.
Now, the dangerous part of that question, I'm like, come on, man. And of course, I believe we had more time. He might have committed suicide anyway. We had the time, but it was so personal to me as far as bringing him in and how that went beyond being professional, being calculated, being smart, being intelligent about the situation, which wasn't a rush job. And I remember telling some administrators, I said, hey man, you could have went to the newspaper, Channel 13, whoever, for today, and say, we're looking for Larry Simpson. I say he probably went in the woods and killed himself because of the embarrassment. But we opted to embarrass him instead of being smart about it. I would say the police probably had without what I had to say or what them added me to it, they had enough to try to terminate him or terminate him, whatever. But they went a little above and beyond. No, they went way above and beyond. Because I used to say, hey, we never went after a criminal like that. We went after one of our own, like the worst criminal that I've never seen him out in my career at the time. So I got very angered about that. And of course, after the fact, as I gathered more information about what played a part, because the interesting thing about people, as far as when they commit suicide, Larry had happened to go to Tennessee to see some of his fellow guys he used to be with on the football teams with that warrant out. But he came back to commit a suicide. He could have went on the lam, but he didn't do that. He came back. And of course, I saw a second suicide letter to his wife, who she allowed me to read. And he was intending on doing that. The media never saw that letter. They put the initial letter, but I saw a secondary letter that I never even told the police department about because I ain't trust him anyway. So, you know, he was planning on doing it. And the line always bust me up. I mean, tears was when he wrote about the part about me, about when the time was right, give my guns to Kevin, tell him I love him, and that I'm sorry. And I still have those guns to this day. 2 guns. The one that killed himself with, as well as his duty weapon, which I wore until I retired in 2010. But the aftermath of that was very difficult.
How was, I know you talked about counting down the days till the old chief left.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like a part of that, and it was a part of that, like, for the healing process for you? Like, how did you get through? I know you said it's still...
You know, and I want to say this, Nick. I don't think there was ever a healing process. Because after it happened, I wasn't sent to a psychiatrist. I think I might have been off from work maybe 2, almost 3 weeks. And then you just come out of work and go 10-8. So I didn't get anything outside of it until I had a moment where I released some anger with some threats towards people that were, they weren't involved. They were just aware of my anger. And if anything, I want to say is, I did all the things not to do. So I can't never tell anybody, you should do this or that. I'm just gonna tell you what to avoid. Because after that, I just started slowly, because of my anger, anger that went into hate, I started slowly disintegrating. Even though I lasted 9 years, everybody knew I was a shell of myself. I started having anxiety attacks. I was put on antidepressants, and I'll tell anybody, don't ever do that. Go find you somebody to talk to. Don't take no meds. Because if you think about it, every time they saw those kind of meds, those little side effects, alcohol abuse, I was drinking like a fish. I was having nightmares. I got to get the sleeping pills because if I need the pill, I would have the nightmare. So, and of course, I lost my marriage because I was hurting so bad, I wasn't even talking to my wife. And then I got involved in some promiscuous behavior. I just didn't care no more. And I say all those things in the hope of nobody to repeat the things I did, because I can honestly say I didn't handle it very well. The police department didn't handle it very well because it was a first-time event. And if anything, I hope to help somebody to say, don't do what I did, because I suffered for it. My career was, once I went after the chief, my career was done. But yet, I'm still trying to be competitive with my peers and stuff. Do well on the test, don't get selected, whatever. And I don't need to go into some of my personal aspirations, but I definitely had them, even though I had a moment of clarity when, and this is I didn't mention that crazy part about when last week had me do his eulogy, how I struggled with that. And how I went down to a park in Grant, Florida, just drove south. It's a little small park down there.
Before you get to the park up there?
It's a small park. It's before you get to Miko, but it's on the water. Very small park. And I went there. And of course, after she asked me to do that, I went down there and I was just crying so hard. My eyeballs were sore because I just never cried that hard over anybody in my life. I mean, I lost relatives, through deaths and stuff like that, people I love, but I never lost somebody to a suicide like that. And this is the crazy part. It took me a while to talk to a psychiatrist about it, but I saw this thing. We're in the daytime talking about, I'm by myself, and I saw this bright light, something that it didn't have a shape. I use the word amorphous shape, which it doesn't have a shape, but it was something real bright, and it wasn't the sun. I knew it wasn't the sun. Everybody think I'm crazy. But that thing told me, do not kill them, because I think about killing some people. I'm not gonna lie. I was coming up with a plan, because my brain really got in a dark place. But if that thing said, do not kill them, do not be afraid, I will protect you, and your career is over. Just like that. It don't make sense that your career is over.
Like God talking to you?
I'm going to say, it kind of, if anything biblically, it reminds me of like maybe that burning bush moment with Moses. When, all I know is, I couldn't describe what it looked like. It's almost like, I wasn't sure if I passed out or time was standing still. It was like it was another dimension. It had to last just maybe milliseconds, but it seemed like it was a while. I just saw perception of time. And it's been so hard to talk about. I get emotional talking about it because I had never seen nothing like that. I never experienced something that make people think, man, you crazy as hell. But I'm like, hey man, it was daytime and this thing was not the sun. But I heard a very authoritative male voice that told me that. And the blessing from that was, I learned not to be afraid. I wasn't afraid to lose my job. I wasn't afraid of nothing I said. And I think that's how I lasted those last 9 years. The Tim was due 30 years. I only did 26 because that money just wasn't worth it for me. But when I saw that thing, and again, it's kind of embarrassing talking about it because I call it one of those crazy moments in life.
So in between that time frame with the 9 years after and the Chiefs gone, new people coming in. At this point, you've been there a while, so you start turning into, you never plan on being it, but like you end up becoming like a mentor to like the new ones coming in. Like, how does that?
I've always had the attitude of I would treat anybody, black or white, whatever, better and greet them better than I was treated. I've always been motivated by that because when you come in a strange place, one of the first things you want to do is feel welcome. And I didn't feel welcome. So I always make sure that whoever I ran into after me, and they were after me, particularly in a supervisor position, I always try to make sure they feel welcome because police work is very interesting. And a lot of people think that police are close. And I said, no, it's not. No, we're not close. We're very competitive. And I said, other than a crisis, which other than the military during a crisis, there's nothing like the police, fire departments, stuff like that. I said, but most of the time you're not in a crisis mode. And unfortunately, that's when the competitiveness, the nastiness, because now you're vying for positions, stuff like that, which could become very nasty. And particularly our department, we were very competitive as well as nasty to each other outside of a crisis, because it's almost like you got to one up the next person. And how you want the next person? You slash the person next to you. So, as a supervisor once told me when I first got promoted sergeant, he said, Fain, you're in a pool of sharks. You're just a guppy. You better become a shark. I never get him telling me that. I'm like, I thought we was all on the same team. Yeah, to a degree. But when you come to positions, getting stuff, padding your retirement, stuff like that, it gets very nasty. And I tell people all the time, man, that so-called thin blue line ain't as blue as you think. Unless it's a crisis. I say, man, we're at each other's throats like you wouldn't believe. Because you got a little better than that person. How you do that? Stab them, shoot them in the knee, whatever. Not shoot them literally in the knee, but chop them at the knee. And so you can send high to that person. It's just some crazy dynamics in police work.
I've noticed where, like, you can tell when there's certain people that genuinely want to see you do well. And then you start to learn there's some people that want you to do good, but they don't want you to do better than them.
Exactly. You put it perfectly. They'll like you until you're competing against them. Mm. And like anything else, if you have certain connections, certain friendships, it's easier for certain people, so you got to really scramble more to compete with them. And I'll tell you about it, the system's not necessarily fair. The testing's not necessarily fair. Just from things I discovered when I was working. And that's just how it is, and how you have to make adjustments to that, and how even stuff like that can add to whatever frustration and anger that you may be dealing with in an organization.
So outside of, how long you been retired now?
It's about 16. I've been retired 16 years. February the 9th, 2010.
So what kind of, like, everybody got different kind of coping mechanisms for certain things. Like for me, I like to run.
That's right, you run marathons. Forget about that.
I got into it late. I
admire you.
I got into it pretty late. Like for me, it's pretty therapeutic.
How old are you?
33.
Oh my God.
But I didn't start till when I was up in Cocoa, where we had like a citywide step challenge, and then like top 5 got an entry into the Space Coast Hat Marathon. So I work a night shift, so I'm just always walking. Got into it, did the hard thing, and I was like that. I felt like when it was done for me, I felt like this was something hard that I did, and it made me feel good, and it kind of made me forget about everything else that I was dealing with, like work and all that kind of stuff. So it's been, I want to say since 2018, I started getting into doing the half. I did it every year. And then the past 2 years, I started doing the marathons. I did the Ultra Marathon. And it was the Vero Beach Ultra that I did. There was a moment where you run along the beach. And for me, I just remember it's like 6 a.m. and I'm looking at the water and the sun. And it just felt like it was just me and God out there. And I felt so like at peace. I was hurting physically, but like my mind, I felt so at peace. And then running through the trails, I never felt more like something that the whole runner's high that they talk about. For me, it felt like I just felt happy. Like I'd rather suffer through this and I feel good, because there's going to be things at work, personal life that you're going to suffer through. And it's just you got to prepare for it.
And I agree with that. And I still have the same mindset to this day. I follow a lot of police stuff. I try not to comment about it because I'm very sensitive about criticism of police. I can't stand somebody in police talk about police without getting in that car and having to have a mental mode of surviving, whatever. And I try, when I talk to young cops, I always say, man, if you're gonna be out there, you gotta have some stamina, some strength, some speed, and some skills. Because, and what I hate about stuff now, and I would say this, I think it's harder to be a police officer today mentally than physically. Now, granted, there are more tools out there now, tasers and all that stuff. But I always believe stuff like that makes you lazy about training, because a lot of people don't realize, hey man, you might one day fight for your life. I mean, we see cops get killed all the time. And of course, it happens so often that it all over the country that it don't even register with people. I'm like, hey man, and I hate seeing the reluctance of officers to not be very violent when necessary. And I've told people, are you a wrestler? You ain't wrestling in high school? So why you gonna be a wrestler out here on the street? You gotta start knocking some jokers out. You gotta be very aggressive. And I'm sorry, no, you gotta be very violent. People are being violent with you. I said, that's how they take your guns. That's how they, we try to do stuff pretty because it's on camera. Like, and I've told civilians, cameras are your enemy, because we're doing stuff like that you don't necessarily need to see to keep you safe.
Yeah.
But now you want to see everything. You can see how ugly it is, because law enforcement ain't pretty. But you want to see the pretty performance. But I've seen a lot of PPP, poor police performance, because they don't engage violently with people acting violent. And that's how, and I'll tell anybody, can you imagine having to deal with somebody who's already made up in their mind what they're gonna do? They're already ahead of the game. They're either gonna flee, do what they're told, or fight.
Yeah.
Just three things. And how you gotta figure real quick, like a computer. If you tell somebody at least 2 times to do something, you better start doing something, because they're measuring you up to do something. And there's a reluctance to be non-aggressive people that are not complying.
It's 2 things where it was like, I heard that saying where they say, sometimes you got to act like a lion to be the sheep or the lamb that you really are, right?
Yeah.
Like where you say, it's like, all right, this guy, he's going to be aggressive. I didn't always want to come to work to be that guy, but if I have to, you got to know you're able to do it, And then that training day quote, Alonzo Harris, where, you got to protect the sheep from the wolf, and sometimes you got to act like the wolf to fight the wolf.
And I say, don't be ashamed about it. Camera's on camera. You want to see America, society, you want to see all this violence? Yeah. Here you go. You ask for it since you don't believe what we say anymore. Okay, well, here, this is kind of stuff that keeps you sleeping well at night. I would say, do you want reactive cops or do you want proactive? I would say out for proactive. At least they're trying to keep stuff from happening. But most people, they don't want to deal with the reactive, which doesn't solve anything. It waits till something's happened. And I hate to say it, but the media's beat that in our society, like law enforcement is supposed to be some kinder arm of society. Like, no, man, that's your inner military, so to speak, in your country, in communities. And you need the people out there that are gonna do the ugly stuff. And don't worry about being critical of it unless you want to do it. People, some they can't do it, don't know they want to do it. I say, well, shut up and enjoy your peace.
Yeah. Because
of me or you or whatever. And I just hate how society-wide it's been twisted to like the police are the bad guy and you're rooting for the bad guy. That just seems to be even in society, it seems to be more of a rooting for the bad guy than the good guy. And it's just everything's all inverted now. So
what would be like your one word of advice for the new generation that kind of deal with the mental aspect of the job?
train like your life depends on it, and do not rely on, have your own self-initiative. Do not rely on a permanent, oh, you go, you may shoot once a year. Okay, well, you go shoot 4 times a year on your own. The self-defense, okay, they may do that once a year. Hey, work on that on your own because your life depends on it. I'll tell anybody, when somebody calls for help, and this makes it sound, this is gonna sound sexist. Well, I'm not trying to be sexist, but I'm being real. When they call for help, and when you walk in that door, you better look like you can do it. And if called on, you better be able to do it. I'm not saying if you're 5'2", 120. Yeah, but I will say there's some images out there like that. I'm like, hey man, if I call for help, please like you can help me. And please do when you get there. And I see a lack of males. Well, I'm being honest, I see more females than ever. I'm not saying they can't do the job, but I am saying that it seems to be, the percentage is starting to get a little strange to me. My former agency hired 8, maybe 6 months ago, and 5 were female. I never seen that before. I'm like, I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm just saying that size does matter. When you try to take some people places they don't want to go. Nobody wants to go to jail. And if you're going to take them there, you need to be capable of taking them there, even if you do it by yourself. And unfortunately, I think we're just filling the seats. We made law enforcement such a undesirable profession, even the decent people don't want to do it. So now sometimes I think we're just getting desperate to fill the seats. But even if you get in a seat, regardless of your sex, whatever, you better be doing something extra other than some department training. Please do that because your life depends on it. And I don't think people get that.
You can never train too much for a job that could kill you.
Yeah. You can get killed any day, any time on any simple call. Because people are more emboldened to act up because it's on camera now. They're performing too. And unfortunately, they're killing us too. So you got to work your mentality to do that. And unfortunately, I think a lot of cops may be kind of lazy. I hate to use that word because people think the gun in their bag is just going to save you. And I tell you about it, most people you're going to be dealing with, you're going to have to scuffle with. And get ready for that. Be able to wrestle, be able to punch, be able to shoot, hit, know where to hit people at. You gotta train your mind for that. And you gotta rehearse over and over again what you're gonna do. Just like when you go on a call, you're going on a hot call, you're already formulating what you're gonna do before you get there, and then you get there, you gotta do something. I just wish more police would do something more on their own initiative than wait for something bad to happen.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming here and telling your story. And it's nice to hear, especially OGs talk about like what they've been through in the past. And I like history because you won't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. You know what I mean?
And I appreciate, and I follow you since Coco PD. I'm like, Nick's here. Nick said, sure, cool. Okay, Nick's in Palm Bay, okay. And I still watch you. I'll follow Curtis up there in Titusville. I don't know a lot of young black officers. I like having lunch with them. If they can, I've tried to. I had lunch with Curtis a couple of times. I don't even know I don't know all of them. And then my fact, it don't matter if you're black, white to me. I just want them to just really get their minds in a set of don't worry about that camera. Do what you got to do, no matter how ugly it is. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to be scrutinized one way or the other, but you don't be scrutinized when you're hurt or dead.
Yeah.
Just do it. Deal with the ramifications for whatever they say. Ride it out so you'll be able to do it again the next day.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate you, and you keep on going and be safe, man.
Well, I'm trying.
You're doing a good job. You kind of hell. You're a marathoner.
I drink too much. That's my fault.
I do too, but I'm retired. But I still had a mindset of I say I got to protect my family. I meant to protect us. I still had a police mentality. That's why I still had the nightmares, because the light bulb ain't going out with me.
Yeah.
No excuses. My age, whatever hurt on me, no excuses. And that's a Marine Corps mentality. I got it. You don't have no excuses. You just gotta do what you gotta do. Retired or not, old man or not, because most evil people out there don't give a damn. So I'm ready to do you too. That's my attitude. So
awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on.